Well, it's time to catch up with blogger to the nation, Tim Blair from the Daily Telegraph. Tim, looking terrific as usual?
Your lies are delicious, Chris. Thank you.
I can't get a good view of you from where I am at the moment anyway. Listen, Scott Morrison has kept a relatively low profile since leaving office, but the Prime Minister has resurfaced at a Pentecostal church run by Margaret Court in WA. I've been there. In a lengthy hour-long sermon, the former PM covered quite a few topics, including not having faith in governments. Have a listen.
We don't trust in governments. We don't trust in the United Nations, thank goodness. We don't trust in all of these things, fine as they might be and as important as the role that they play. Believe me, I've worked in it and they are important. But as someone who's been in it, if you are putting your faith in those things like I put my faith in the Lord, you are making a mistake.
Tim, if only he'd told us that when he was running the joint.
Who knew that Scott Morrison had values? Good ones, like opposition to the UN. I've raised all manner of issues with the UN with various Liberals over the years, and it's always, oh, you know, it'll be okay, they mean well, they've got a lot of experts, we've got international obligations is always a big point that they make about our various deals with the UN that always end up costing us. And the results always in the UN insulting us at every chance over everything from refugees to climate policy. So now we're hearing from the former number one in the nation that the UN shouldn't be trusted. Alleluia, brother. Testify.
Yes, he's actually on our side. Now, I don't recall seeing a climate protester in recent months, although Blockade Australia was promising all kinds of mayhem last month. But since the election of Labor, the usual rowdy suspects have gone to ground. Maybe this is one of the benefits of a Labor government, Tim. We can all get to work without disruption.
Well, yeah, you had your Blockade Australia guys who talked up a big game all year that they were going to stop Sydney in June. I think they only... here they are having some fun on the streets. But that was only a couple of days, and then they gave it up and said they were going to come back when they were bigger and stronger. So I think we're in for a long wait, judging by the looks of most of them. That one can't even carry a table. So, well, that one's got some moves on him. That's some league talent you're seeing there. But remember the Friday school strikes that we always used to have?
Yes.
Constantly, and always the pictures of Scott Morrison and the big banners and so on. Well, where are the pictures of Albo? Nothing's changed. There are no policy alterations. No. The situation is exactly the same, so get out there and protest, children.
Yes, exactly. Now, the other side of the coin, Dutch farmers are rioting against new environmental laws. And in Sri Lanka, as you and I have discussed previously, at least part of the problem has been the rapid shift to green energy. The climate zealots can actually learn from these examples of what happens when you rush to renewable energy.
Absolutely. Sri Lanka's case is absolutely tragic. You know, when you go full-on organic so you can be ecologically sound and you kill your tea industry, which is not a small one in Sri Lanka, formerly known obviously as Ceylon, kind of like the home of tea. And the Dutch farmers are being told, some of them are being told that they've got to get rid of 95% of their stock. Try selling a farm that's limited to just 5% of its previous numbers. Ridiculous. They're trapped. So the only people who can buy those farms are the government. All very cosy, isn't it?
Yeah, very true. But they're pushing back, which I love to see. Now, in the US, there's constant talk of whether Joe Biden will run again in 2024. Tim, I'm sick of this talk. There is no chance, surely.
No, not at all. I think if Joe was being honest, he'd be on the same boat as that as well. But the problem with the Democrats, the talent pool ain't deep beyond that. I mean, and Joe's not exactly the most brilliant president either. So who's next? It certainly isn't Kamala Harris. She's polling even worse than Joe Biden. She's the only person who possibly could poll worse than Joe Biden. So they don't have much. And on the other side, the Republican side, you've got people like the Florida governor, Mr. DeSantis, who's looking more impressive by the day. So let's see how we go in the midterms. That'll give us a pretty good guide for 2024.
What are your thoughts on the old CIA director and Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, putting his hand up? He's prepared to run.
Yep.
That might be against his old boss, Donald Trump. Now, we don't know what the Donald will do, but he could. The US could do a lot worse than put Mike Pompeo in the Oval Office.
Absolutely. I had some good contact with people in Pompeo's department when he was in government. they're very much on Australia's side. They pay attention to Australia. They knew a great deal about political and social events here. So he might be the Australian candidate. We might have to adopt him.
Yeah, we can. Staying in the US, a recent Black Lives Matter protest just went too far. After a 6-hour standoff, police fatally shot a 20-year-old gunman who'd fired rounds into a neighbouring apartment in Minneapolis. Since then, BLM has used this as another example of police violence against black Americans, and they're back protesting at the location of the shooting. But a local woman, Arabella Yarbrough, who was cooking for her children when bullets riddled her home, well, I tell you what, didn't she give it to the BLM protesters? Have a look.
Because you guys are celebrating his life.
It was a terror. I'm sure it was a terror.
This is not okay. Not okay.
You're alive.
Okay.
Shut up.
You guys need to just let it go. This is not a George Floyd situation. George Floyd was unarmed. My kids have to deal with this and probably have a mental illness now because they almost lost their life. There's bullet holes in my kitchen because he sat in the hallway watching my move.
In other words, have your say, but put your guns and your bullets away.
I do like that exchange towards the end where she says, there are holes all throughout my house. This guy was trying to kill us. And one of the Black Lives Matter supporters says, yeah, but there's no holes in you, though.
Ugh.
Oh, right, so it's fine then, is it? Right, okay, cool. No harm, no foul. Let's just everything right. I mean, he was just shooting randomly into a house. He could have killed 3 people, 2 little kids, and that woman. No wonder she's upset. And I think BLM have pulled the wrong rein on this one.
An outrageous argument. Now, finally, Prince Harry is back in the news. He made a fiery speech at the UN, and it's fair to say he was able to touch on every left-wing talking point possible. Take a listen.
The few weaponising lies and disinformation at the expense of the many. And from the horrific war in Ukraine to the rolling back of constitutional rights here in the United States, we are witnessing a global assault on democracy and freedom, the cause of Mandela's life. As we sit here today, our world is on fire again. And this crisis will only grow worse unless our leaders lead.
It was Nelson Mandela International Day. Harry's starting to sound like his father with climate alarmism, and he's never had a real job, Tim. What does he know about the rest of the world?
Well, I like the fact that we've got a royal telling us about democracy. Can anyone run for that position? Is that an elected post? By the way, I didn't know Greta Thunberg had a beard. Good for her.
It's very interesting. Just sit down, be quiet, go away. Tim Blair, not you, him. Thank you very much for your time.